You know what? I frequently forget that we just want the music from that and not the Sunday with Charles logo.
That's all right.
I'll put a Wednesday in there.
That's okay.
But of course, you're closing in today, Charles, and we added this segment because this persistent delivery of Charles Ortel information, it's like the erosion of the Grand Canyon from drops of water, and I think that the Clintons' criminal organization is faring in a similar fashion to the rocks there in Arizona.
Well, thanks for embarking on this journey back in the summer of last year. I think we've done pushing on 75 of these videos. Yeah. And a number of weeks ago, I think it really was our mutual idea or months ago, that we ought to do more than one a week because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
That we ought to do 2 a week. And indeed, the volume of information that's coming out, the growing realization that this really is not a small scandal. It isn't even Watergate. It's not even a political scandal. It is a gigantic story of fraud and corruption that stretches to many international capitals across most continents. Who knows how much money we're really going to be talking about in the end. It's taking the mainstream and even Fox time and others who are quite good time to grasp the enormity of this, because it involves Democrats and Republicans, and as we've said in the past, it involves so many people around the world.
Yeah.
So thanks for letting me do this, and hats off to the art department again for another tour de force. I mean, this poster has got to end up at least as a mug, if not as a T-shirt. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. I haven't been as on the ball with the swag store. There have been minimal sales on there, but people can go to redbubble.com and search for Crowdsource the Truth and find all kinds of interesting items. I definitely will put a Coneheads mug in there. And Charles, we really started this closing in series when there was this palpable sense of a quickening that, there are a lot of people out there saying like, oh, when is Trump going to drain the swamp? But he's surrounded, as we see, the leaders in the DOJ, the judges, Rod Rosenstein, all these people around him are part of the swamp. So this getting in the swamp and draining it is a very complicated process, but I'm glad that we've started this. I'm glad that we're able to concentrate the effort, and you've told us about investigations beginning in the United Kingdom, investigations in France. Of course, during the course of doing this show, we've seen Nicolas Sarkozy getting arrested. I mean, that's crazy to me. That's a huge deal.
Right. Well, I think like anything else, if you've got a rigged system, which is really what I believe we had beginning in about 1988, 1989, you could argue, some might argue that it was rigged beforehand, but if you have a rigged system and there's a limited number of people at the top feeding on everybody else, then the know-it-alls at the top, they're trying to figure out who's going to play along to let you in on the game of the rigging and fleecing everybody else. And they've been getting away with it now for 30 years or more, and they kind of felt they were invulnerable. Yeah. So and to date, really, you look around the world, has there been change? Yes, but has the system demonstrably improved lives in the United States for the better since 1988? And I would argue no. So they thought they could get away with it, and Trump, you think back to what he did. He only announced for president in, I want to say, June of 2015.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
And, to in less than 2 years, as his first step, to defeat, it was either 15 or 16 rivals, I forget which, including...
And he made fun of them, too, which was pretty funny.
Including Yeb, who had $100 million.
God, he was so pissed. You will never be president. What is Jeb doing now?
Right, I don't know. He's
playing croquet in Kenny Bunkport, or
if that,
maybe shooting raccoons in Texas, or what do they hunt that he was talking about?
I don't know, but he's I think he lives in Florida, doesn't he?
don't know. Oh, right. He was the governor of Florida, but there was some sort of strange animal that they were hunting that I had never.
Quail or?
Skink hunting or something?
I wouldn't know.
I don't know what that's about, but they're.
But so he goes, first he goes and he takes out all the Republicans, and then he bests, the woman who was destined to rule the world, who had Humpty Hump billions and a lock on the media and all the inside games. She'd rigged the primaries. She thought they'd rigged the election. I mean, so to go in there, he's, I'll try not to use really bad language, but I mean, he cheesed off a lot of people. And they nearly thought that they would make it so that he wouldn't be inaugurated, and then they nearly thought that after that, they'd get him very quickly impeached.
Yeah.
So with something as big as our federal government is, with so many external threats and so many domestic challenges, you would hope a guy like President Trump would take his time. And he had to sniff out who the good people were, who the bad. He manifestly made some mistakes. I mean, this guy Sessions, he's a short version of Gumby. What the hell?
Well, Gumby was a lot more flexible. He could do all kinds of things, jump into any storybook.
Right. But here you got Gumby, and then Gumby appoints Rosenstein. How did Rosenstein get to be the second most powerful person, and indeed the most powerful person when it comes to this Russia investigation? Because Gumby immediately recused himself.
I think if all Donald Trump did was watch this program and follow your information, he would learn a lot. Like, I don't know why Rod Rosenstein remains employed. Donald Trump has got to know the things that you've pointed out as far as Rosenstein being the guy who covered, what was the key investigation that he was?
It's maybe Ortel.
Whitewater, wasn't he involved?
It might be Ortel's second law, which is you put Rosenstein's name into Google. Right. And any conceivable recent fuck-up since 1992,
he was behind it.
He'll be there. That could be his second law.
That's hilarious. But I can't help but, just as we have this sense of quickening with something actually happening in Washington, D.C., things like Donald Trump tweeting, "Why has nobody indicted Tony Podesta?" Right. That's a lot of heat to come on you when the President of the United States is singling you out as, why is this guy not in jail? And there's good reason for him to be. I really feel, Charles, that there is a quickening in the efforts of the people that want to take down Crowdsource the Truth. And I'm not trying to make this about me. It's not about me. They want it to appear that way. This is about a concerted effort to stop the flow of information from important people like you, who I am merely providing a platform for, and whether it's you or Harmon Wilfred or Robin Gritz or any of the people. Scott Bennett has been on the show. We had Thomas Paine, of course, John Shirley yesterday, retired Houston police officer who's got a system for mitigating school violence. They just don't want this information coming out, and they try to hide it as they don't like me, or I'm attacking them, or I'm saying something like. That's not it at all. And the reason I want to share this with the audience is because we need to expose it, because the way it's being done is quite clever. It's decentralized so that, it's not exactly criminal, the type of harassment that's going on, or at least I can't seem to get any law enforcement agency interested enough to prosecute these people. And they operate with hidden identities through fake accounts and false names and a variety of different techniques like this, because they're smart in how they execute these things. So I think what I need to start doing is just keep pointing it out so that people know what it is that we're dealing with, so that it loses its effectiveness. I was on a radio broadcast last night with Quinn Michaels. We were on Clyde Lewis's show, Ground Zero, very popular radio program, and one of these people who love to try to stop us from doing the right thing came on the show and started pitching his case to Clyde. And that's not a court of law. It's just really a distraction and a waste of time. So there's a lot of people that have been looking for Sunday with Charles. They've been looking for Closing In. And because of the YouTube strikes that Crowdsource the Truth and the various iterations have come under, they're having a difficult time finding it sometimes. So I just want to remind people that they can always see the show, or at least there have been no disruptions so far. You can go to periscope.tv/ CS The Truth, and you can get to Crowdsource the Truth that way. And of course, we always appreciate it when people become sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. We've only got 387 patrons on there right now, and really would like to get it up closer to 1,000 or 1,500. This number is old. There's over 58,000 subscribers on YouTube right now, on the main YouTube channel, and we really need just a small fraction of those regular subscribers to be checking in on Patreon and becoming a monthly sponsor to keep the channel financially healthy. And of course, Charles, you pointed out to me that both you and I are being shadow banned on Twitter. So definitely want to take the opportunity to remind people to follow you on Twitter at Charles Ortel. And you're always tweeting a lot of interesting articles about our favorite unhinged politicians. And it's a good way to keep up with breaking news. They can, of course, hear about broadcasts as they happen by following Crowdsource the Truth on Twitter, and they can, there's been a definite drop-off in the followers lately, so I think there is.
Look at this.
Yeah, devastating stroke text found.
This is just 17 hours old. This is...
Right, and that's from our friends at True Pundit, who are always doing great work. And the NYPD is apparently ready to arrest Harvey Weinstein if the Clinton puppet, who's the Manhattan DA, doesn't, quote, show some balls. So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming from Thomas Paine and True Pundit all the time. And we'll get back to some more of that a little later. But I know you've prepared, as usual, a very comprehensive slide presentation for us today about these members of the Department of Justice and the intelligence services who are cone-headed in nature.
Yeah, well, hats off to the art department again. I think I particularly like the Brennan as the conehead with the earrings, because this guy Brennan, I'm telling you, I wouldn't have let him into Horace Mann, for 7th grade, let alone to put him in charge of the CIA. I mean, there are just so many. I mean, tell me what the vetting process is, please, at the CIA to get into the CIA. It's got to be pretty tough. But to put this guy, who so obviously has no morals, no standards.
I think that's the process. You need to meet that criteria.
Well, so this is a presentation where we're expanding on the theme, how it seems to me, Cheryl Atkinson was on Hannity last night, and Sarah Carter was making some great points about how about the 15-16 election cycle and what was really going on. And Cheryl backed the truck up and said, "No, wait a minute. It is interesting, 15-16, but to see what's really going on, you got to go back further into history." And I think, and I believe you share the view, Jason, that what was really going on here is establishment Republicans, establishment Democrats seized upon the September 11th, 2001 crisis. And I think they truly did want to defend this country, but they went way too far down the line, just at a time when internet technology was going to broadband, when these tools that were now ubiquitous, the cell phones or whatever, became ever more intrusive in our lives afterwards. We surrendered willingly in this country and around the world to this deep state. We willingly give lots of information away for free in Facebook and Twitter and Google and elsewhere. We let these faceless billionaires monetize our personal information. We have given them tremendous power. The deep state has tremendous power to access that information. Contractors of the deep state also have such power. And I think we're now at a crossing, past a tipping point, where ordinary Americans are saying, wait a minute, this is not working so well for us. And these exalted coneheads, who run around the world saying, don't worry, we've got everything under control, we're not spying on you, they're being exposed for what they are, which is straight up criminals.
Yeah.
And they have the audacity, including, Clapper most recently, Brennan beforehand, McCabe, Comey and others, to threaten the President of the United States. And that's just bogus. I mean, we don't have four branches of government where the deep state sits on top of everything else. That's not what we have here. And there need to be some example set And I don't know if you were telling me or somebody was telling me that in Trump's book, was it you who were telling me about this? That it was a friend of ours was telling me that, reminded me that in Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, he talks about when somebody, behaves untoward towards you, you have to make an example of that person. You can't just let it ride.
No, I agree. I agree with that, and we're just showing the clip of Cheryl Atkinson there. She knows very well firsthand what it's like to have the government and the deep state spy on you. Cheryl appeared on this show not too long ago talking all about her experience, that the book The Smear was based on, and she's got a lawsuit going against the federal government where through very sophisticated means they've revealed that she was spied on. She's told me about some of the weaknesses in Skype and some of the ways in which these malicious actors can get into your personal information and even plant evidence on the computer that they then later use. And we're seeing this here as well, how the legitimate legal system, or that's maybe a generous term to call it legitimate, but the legal system is being utilized by some of these people who understand it very well to legitimize their efforts by submitting these official motions and documents and all kinds of things. In Cheryl's case, they tried to present evidence from her computer, but then it becomes this whole thing of, well, how did it get there? If someone's hacking you, they can do that sort of thing. So it's a really unprecedented level of control and manipulation that they've got there.
So we could probably go to the second page. And there is our standard disclaimer for the new viewers. We have a First Amendment right to express our opinions here, and we try to express them based on fact. We believe that in most cases, in virtually all cases, we're laying out for you not only our views, but links to the supporting arguments for our views. And we do encourage people, if they have differing views and constructive criticism, to get to us with those views. Jason and I were just talking actually before we started. A good approach, one that will get our attention, is one sentence explaining your main concern, and then if you want to send us 70 pages of supporting information after that, we will not read 70 pages of information to see the conclusion at the end. We're not going to do it.
It's just not possible.
Yeah.
There's so many people sending so much information that even being able to get through it. The way I generally work is that if someone sends a short email that's of a topic of interest, that's coherently written, that seems like it's coming from someone who's got their head screwed on straight, then I want to learn more. I usually want to get on the phone with the person. And the reason for that is so many people are sending false information to bait me, and even you, I'm sure. We've seen that happen where people invite us to things or try to present a story or say, hey, you should go interview this person. There's somebody who likes to suggest interviews to me that seem to lead to problems. So it's good advice, Charles.
Right. So what we've done, I don't know if we go back, well, this is the excellent playlist that Jason has put together. I guess we do have now 75 videos.
Right. Look at that. And the views of the playlist are growing, Charles.
That's good.
That's just 8,000 views on the playlist. Each of the videos themselves have a substantial number of views. And along the lines of what I was saying earlier, how the videos and the channels are getting attacked, 9,000 views is respectable for a show from just a few days ago, but this is the type of video that certainly would have gotten 20 to 30,000 views, and we're just a couple weeks away from the original Crowdsource the Truth channel getting its full capabilities back of live streaming and all that. We've tried a number of different measures to mitigate this problem of malicious strikes against the channel, and it's very interesting to see how YouTube doles out its brand of justice. I was speaking with some people, Charles, who told me that the Digital Millennium Copyright Act actually gives YouTube a certain amount of immunity from any sort of legal action because they are seen as merely the platform. Like, you can't sue Verizon or AT&T for somebody harassing you over the internet because they're providing the internet. They're just, the network.
Yeah.
But I think that YouTube crosses a line a little bit because they don't seem to be applying these policies universally and in the same way to everyone. So to that extent, they become a little bit of an editor of this content, and they might have some legal liability there. It's something that perhaps we might have to explore further if we continue to be pressed, because it seems like even though these lawsuits, or I should say the lawsuit that's been brought against me personally by someone who everyone knows, it has no merit, but they're just not letting up. So I've begun to think that no matter what I do, they're going to keep bringing frivolous lawsuits, forcing me to have to answer. So it becomes very important for people to support Crowdsource the Truth and show that they don't want to stand up for that sort of thing.
Good. Well, so, and I agree with that. Why don't we go to the third slide rather. Okay. Now, this is a great piece, the first piece here, by Richard Pollack of the Daily Caller, and we may as well pull that up if we can. Yeah.
Oh.
And yeah, Richard has done an amazing article here where it turns out that Andrew Weissman, the pit bull of Andrew Mueller, Loretta Lynch, and the judge, this article claims that the judge who is presiding over the grand jury investigation into this whole Russia collusion thing is a friend, a longtime friend of Loretta Lynch, Andrew Weissman, and they're all friendly. They all, wait a minute, they all work together at the Eastern District of New York. And I thought, I've talked to lawyers since I saw this, I said, I thought there have to be, you know, you can't have even an appearance of a conflict of interest, let alone a conflict of interest. And think of the conflicts of interest here. You have Mueller, Dopey James Comey, Rosenstein the rat, all involved, failing to catch the Clinton Foundation fraud between 2001 and 2005. Then Mueller misses Laureate. Rosenstein misses Laureate in his capacity as U.S. Attorney for Baltimore. Rosenstein and Mueller miss Uranium One. They miss the fraudulent reorganization of the Clinton Foundation, that is to say Mueller. Rosenstein misses Clinton Bush, Haiti. And this is the team who immediately is put on this witch hunt against Donald Trump. I mean, I don't buy the argument that the president, because he may or may not be a subject of investigation, has to stand back and say, I have to tolerate a gross abuse of judicial and judicial branch operations here in this witch hunt. I have to tolerate all this stuff. No, you don't. You have a responsibility as President of the United States to stand up and protect the American people. And this precedent's being set here with, you know, a crook. I would argue Robert Mueller is a crook. I mean, he should never, with his conflicts, he should never have accepted the assignment. He shouldn't have been considered for the assignment. If he's so ramrod straight lily white, he should have said, I can't do this. I've got an appearance of a conflict of interest. Instead, he said, I'm all in. Let me put my team together of rabid anti-Trump Democrats and never Trumpers, and we're gonna go far and wide wherever we want. It's very clear that he has to be crooked.
Well, when you lay it out like that, Charles, I think it really paints a picture of the way these things have operated for many, many years. I mean, these guys have got the whole system locked up. They know the judge, they know the attorney general, they know everybody in between, they get the right people appointed. I mean, this is how they play the game in DC. And I really do think that for the first time ever, shows like the one that we're doing, sources like True Pundit, even Daily Caller, LifeSet, all these different things are putting so much attention on this that people have got to start taking notice and paying attention. It can't go on any longer.
Well, I hope what's going to happen, Jason, I remember during the fall of Eastern Europe, back then there was no internet, and it was just pamphlets. It was mimeograph pamphlets, which were called Samsudot or something like that, that were, people would run these off in these old-fashioned pre-Xerox machine things, and then they take blue ink and they pass them person to person. That's what we're doing here. That if the Crowdsource the Truth audience can share these videos, even if we're shadow banned, to share them by email, share them to friends. We're seeing a lot of that, actually. People are doing that, but this is a very important thing that we're seeing here, that they would go down this track, on something as important than this. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but thinking through the precedent that you would be trying to set here, taking down a sitting president, Donald J.
crazy.
Trump. Well, let's go into Mrs. Clinton land and say, you know, let's go into the universe where Donald Trump was indeed colluding with the Russians, which I don't think he was.
The bizarro universe.
Bizarro Clinton land. But in that land, you would want to see, you know, for posterity, you would want to see a process that was objective, so that Donald Trump and his followers couldn't say, if Mueller was successful in convicting him, and it, you know, it went up the chain or however it would go, that his people couldn't say, wait a minute, this was completely illegitimate, and you descend into civil war, right? You'd want to pick fair-minded people to go after this. And clearly the team on this is utterly conflicted, not fair-minded, and has damaged this either way.
If co-conspirators.
Well, if Mueller has to abandon this, Hillary and the resistance team are all going to be upset forever. They're going to be even more upset when they are, I won't use the correct phrase, but when they're witch-slapped in November of 2018, and then there's a landslide in 2020. It's almost as if this team wants the United States to descend into anarchy, which I think could be what they want.
Yeah.
So there's an important second story here, which is on Zero Hedge, and this is really something. You've already, I think, you got it up there, yeah. There's a whole bunch of new emails that have been purposely withheld. And again, we are not third graders here, you know, where you could say, all right, listen, little Jason, you know, no, Christmas is coming or Hanukkah's coming and you're not going to get any presents this year. You're not going to get any presents. Oh, really? I'm not going to get any presents? No, Jason. And then you're very happy with this lump of coal or whatever you get, because at least you got a present. You got to unwrap it. I mean, you can't say that there are all these emails that are personal, you know, and you don't really need to see them, and, you know, hold them back from the American public for months and months and months. And now look at this, 7.3 thousand shares. This story came out yesterday at 9 p.m., right? There's a whole bunch of new emails that apparently do show that McCabe and Comey were involved, coordinating the Steele dossier with CNN.
That's really unprecedented.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, it's being covered up, but I mean, this is really serious. I don't know how. I'm still amazed to travel around. You know, I've been to Los Angeles recently, and we're in New York here, of course. There is a stunning number of people who still think that Trump colluded with Russia and that these emails are about yoga.
Right.
They think that. It's crazy. It's like massive mind control. And you know, we jokingly speak about Wiccan practices, and we've heard Larry Nichols talk about Hillary Clinton going to black magic ceremonies in Los Angeles, and of course in the WikiLeaks John Podesta emails we've heard about spirit cooking and Moloch, the superb owl. Quinn Michaels has been digging into all kinds of occult practices, but I do believe that some of these ancient methods are being applied with modern technology, like through television. It's almost as if some sort of spell has been cast on these people, and it may be a simple psychological technique that back in the day was considered a spell, but so many people believe this nonsense.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that with this coming out now, you know, it's like, what's that famous phrase, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
Right.
I mean, you know, you're sitting there and, you know, your wife is doing the dirty deed with, you know, the handyman next door right in front of you after she said that, you know, she wasn't seeing anybody and why are you so suspicious? Comes a time where you look at these mugs and you say, these people they don't know how to do anything else other than lie. And especially McCabe, especially McCabe. I mean, he was put in, Cheryl Atkinson's starting to put this timeline together, but I don't think she's going far enough yet. He was installed to shut this investigation of Clinton down in early February 2016. Look at that mug. Right. Look at all these these details that are coming out.
Yeah.
Look at the closeness of Lisa Page to McCabe. Look at the stroke Page text, and look at all these obvious signs of wrongdoing, and then look at this idiot. I mean, really.
We haven't heard too much from Andrew McCabe after he was, you know, fired, and there was that occurrence of him starting a GoFundMe, and it almost immediately accumulating over $500,000. Now, I got to tell you, Charles, I find that incredibly suspicious because I've known people who've had leukemia, have had little kids having things, surgery for a baby, and you're not getting anywhere near 500,000. Now, of course, McCabe's got national news coverage, but I mean, he's not Taylor Swift. I don't think everybody knows who he is. And also, he's rich. Who the hell is giving him $500,000? It's all these anonymous contributions. I feel like it's criminals who that's like their insurance policy. We'll start the GoFundMe and send you $500,000 if you shut up.
Well, I think the whole area of the GoFundMe accounts needs to get better scrutiny, because if you want to pay a bribe, it's perfect, right? You just set up a GoFundMe account, and there's got to be algorithms you put money in a master account, and all these small $5 things go in.
Oh, right. Yeah, somebody could easily do that. We know people who are masters of mastering fake accounts. There's got to be an easy way to do that.
Right. So if we go back in, because I'm mindful of our...
Yeah, sorry, I've been yapping a lot.
That's okay. So this is a very interesting, the third story here, which I think you already have up. That one, yeah.
Right.
Right, so this is a story that purports to say somebody, possibly from the NSA, tried, I believe, to entrap this guy, Michael Caputo, a Republican consultant, with the idea that they had 33,000, somehow the NSA had these missing emails. And I have to say, I heard that story from multiple sources, even before this, who said, whether it's not Napolitano publicly or other sources, have said, look, you got to understand, the NSA has all of this stuff.
Everything, yeah.
And the issue is they can't turn it over because they're not supposed to be spying inside this country. So the question is, how do you get the emails from the NSA to those who would want to see them? And so this story makes sense, but the process of getting them out of the NSA to a domestic source involved in politics would probably involve criminal activity, and therefore may well be entrapment. But this is an important story, and instead of forget what fake yapper at CNN and the MSNBC crowd and and all those folks have to say, NBC, CBS, ABC. We need to have skeptical, objective people, and I would argue Mark Levin is one of those people. The team that's all on Hannity every night, great people, Tucker's people, Laura Ingraham. Let's stop this baloney that we need fair and balanced, because we've had nothing but nonstop spewing, hate-filled propaganda coming out of the, quote, lamestream media on this. They tried to deceive us, they're co-conspirators and all this.
Yeah.
Let's understand, let's have experts. Who's that fellow, Binney, so involved with the NSA and warned about the dangers of the NSA. Let's have somebody like him explain the probability that the NSA does not have all of Hillary Clinton's emails. Right?
I'd say it's zero.
Yeah, if it would be possible to be less than zero, it would be less than zero.
And
so,
Jack Posobiec is with One American News Network now. I don't know if everybody knows that, but Jack has a lot of good sources there. He's a former ONI officer, or I don't know if that's former or current or what, but I had seen some more reporting on this that said that the NSA guy had approached him through an intermediary, and is that possibly Peter Smith?
I doubt it. I doubt it, but one will never. We'll never know. Sadly.
Now we'll never know. Yeah.
So now, this piece, the Hill piece that you also, I think you have all of them.
Yep.
This is a great story. It went up, I think, early this morning, 11:15 this morning. 8 reasons pointing to a counterintelligence operation against the Trump campaign, and I really do think that's exactly what happened. I mean, you go back into Hillary's long history, Bill's long history, they were the ones who pioneered the, quote, war room. They thought it was really funny to have their slithering snakes like Blumenthal and other people go off and find all the dirt against anybody. And you can imagine the scene after Hillary exits with all the property she could steal out of the State Department. She's sitting there saying, okay, we got this in the bag. It'd be nice if we could hold the elections now. Maybe we can get, some way to make that happen, but we'll have to wait till 2015-16. Let's figure out how to just rig the whole thing, right? And so, as a guess, this whole plan. It really couldn't begin in earnest until the Republicans announced who was going to actually compete. But once they had the gun sights, they could say, well, this guy's never going to make, Lindsey Graham, we don't need to waste any time on that. And I like Mike Huckabee, but he's never going to win, so let's not worry about him. Who do we have to worry about? And somebody said, well, and Bill probably said, you better watch this Trump guy.
But didn't they not take him seriously for most of the time?
In the beginning, I think they actually hoped that Trump would be the candidate. We will find out in time, but in the beginning, I think they probably hoped that he would be the nominee because they felt that they would have more dirt in his bachelor days and his 40-year-old days, and before that, in his various divorces and scandals. But this is an excellent story, worth reading at your leisure. We won't try to go through it now, but it's a good piece by Cheryl Atkinson, laying the groundwork and beginning to provide the context, the important context, about how it is likely that a deep state operation was put in place to get Trump from the very beginning.
Right. Cheryl does amazing work.
She really does.
Got to dig into that.
So then, also, this is a nice piece in the American Spectator, and it's good for many reasons, but it does highlight the excellent work of Michael Smith. We, of course, had Michael Smith on this program and are very grateful for his friendship and his hard work. But the fellow who wrote this piece is a former prosecutor, federal prosecutor, and he is
for Australia or the U.S.?
From the U.S. And I contacted him this afternoon when I saw this story, and he came right back to me, and I said, listen, there's a lot more to your piece that we need to talk about, and we will talk, I hope, about all this. This is focusing on the fact that Downer provided that money from Australia in 2006 to the Clinton Foundation, and it doesn't in this story get into the kind of details that we have and that Michael's provided, that at the time that the Australian government provided this money, the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative in the US didn't exist, let alone in Papua New Guinea and the various places where the Australian money was due to go. It wasn't validly organized anywhere. So there's a big story here. It may take time to pierce through the bureaucracy and the inside game in Australia, who are all wedded to Team Clinton now. But this is a good story by, if you go to the very bottom, the author's name is given.
George Perry?
George Perry, yeah. Lengthy story, and it says a former federal and state prosecutor who's practicing law in Philadelphia. So I contacted him, I'll be in touch with him, and hopefully there'll be some good follow-up. Yeah. He didn't know, I don't think, and I contacted him, I explained in my email that the money that was sent by Australia, if it was used to buy drugs, it most likely bought adulterated Ranbaxy HIV/AIDS medicines. And he also didn't know about the connection to Rod Rosenstein, who took way too long to bring Ranbaxy almost to justice, but not really. So I think we'll get more out of this, more reporting out of this former federal and state prosecutor, and this was a good story that appeared
just yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, so he's talking about the Papadopoulos affair. That's, of course, you've spoken about how Alexander Downer, who was the Prime Minister of Foreign Minister, sorry, of Australia, met with this Papadopoulos guy who's like a young nobody, and it seems weird that they would even be meeting.
Yeah, I mean, here's a guy who was, former foreign minister. He gets appointed. He's from a famous family, a dynastic political family in Australia, and he gets appointed, having been foreign minister, which is a senior role. He decides to become the ambassador of Australia to the UK, which is a demotion, and that's odd. And he was involved with this thing, Hacklet, which is
private intelligence firm.
Right, and it just
too many of those.
Exactly, and it just reeks to high heaven. The timeline, the notion that the two of them would end up, having a few drinks in a wine bar. I mean, I could believe actually that an Australian would be in a wine bar. What I don't get is that he'd be in a wine bar with a 33-year-old George Papadopoulos, who in theory is married. What were they doing in this wine bar? I mean, and it doesn't make any sense.
What is Papadopoulos' role? He was just a low-level guy in the Trump?
He had been named along with Carter Page. People were pressing Donald Trump, okay, you're a businessman, what foreign policy credentials do you have? And I think in April timeframe, he had been he was forced to name who were some of the people he was consulting with on foreign policy, and Carter Page and Papadopoulos were two on a long list of names. And so the deep state plot was probably to, get these two guys and others implicated in sloppiness or worse, maybe tying them to Russia, to delegitimize them before the election and after the election, maybe to use them as foils for the fake argument that they were colluding with Russia. That's my guess.
Yeah, it seems to be the way a lot of this stuff goes. They just put some fake person in there with some fake information and try to use that to trip somebody up.
Yeah. So this is a great piece here, and it raises a great question. If the Russian issue was so pervasive, why under Obama's tenure didn't anybody get a lot more serious? I mean, why before Mueller, is called upon to indict somebody for the DNC hack, why didn't Obama care a lot more? I hate to use that word, Obamacare, but why didn't he care more about the threats potentially posed by Russia and other state actors to the election? I mean, if it was such a serious thing, why didn't he care more about it? And if Mueller is supposed to investigate Russian collusion, how come he hasn't gone to the FBI and said, look, there was supposedly this leak or hack involving DNC files. Why back when that happened, we've got Dopey James Comey, we've got Strzok. We know why Strzok wouldn't have done anything. He was too busy texting Lisa Page. But, why didn't McCabe or some other agents demand to know what really happened with this DNC hack, which occurred, I think, in the spring timeframe of 2016?
Well, and of course, the FBI hasn't even examined the supposedly hacked servers. It went to Dmitry Alperovich's CrowdStrike, which is essentially another one of these private intelligence firms. This one's focused on digital forensic examinations. Now, I brought up this article because this was just brought to my attention that Facebook has partnered with the Atlantic Council to fight election propaganda. Now, of course, the Atlantic Council counts as one of its members Dmitry Alperovich, who is the chief technology officer of CrowdStrike. So now you're giving everybody's Facebook personal information essentially to CrowdStrike, and the same guys who didn't find hacking or whatever, who were the only guys to investigate this server, are now going to be fighting election propaganda. It sounds to me like they're figuring out a better way to rig the next election.
I'd say, I'm not making investment recommendations here, but it just would, I would be studying Facebook as a short. Anyway, so go back into the slides. There is this article by Mark Penn, which has gotten a lot of attention, rightfully so. Look at this, 42,000 Facebook shares. Here's a Democrat, a die-hard Democrat and Clinton supporter, probably until Hillary Clinton stiffed him on the 2008 bills.
Should we just start calling them Atlantic Council shares? 42,000?
But Mark Penn writes this excellent piece saying, wait a minute, this having an out-of-control special prosecutor who reports to no one. We don't really know the basis upon which he's been appointed to do anything, is so far outside constitutional bounds. It sets such a bad track record that this needs to be stopped.
It really feels like, the Clintons or whoever it's like this special counsel thing. When did what was the first special counsel ever? Was it Watergate?
I honestly don't know. It might have been.
It'd be worth finding out, because maybe Archibald Cox, I don't know, but it's almost like the Clintons put him in there, and it's like we've got the president, and now we've got this made-up position of somebody to constantly hassle the president.
Right. Well, there has to be oversight. There's a system of checks and balances, 3 co-equal branches of government. This man has nobody sitting on top of him, and manifestly he's made so many mistakes already. And it seems clear to me that collusion isn't a crime. He was appointed illegally, as Levin points out. You're supposed to, under the statute, appoint somebody, special counselor, I think it is, not prosecutor in this case,
right?
To look into a crime to decide not into a person but into a crime. And so everything about this reeks. But this article by Mark Penn is a great piece and deserves wide focus. And it's good to see Democrats standing up and saying this. This is the first, Dershowitz is another one, but this is the first political Democrat who decided to do this. And we won't mention, Jason, where we were on Sunday because we're not supposed to, but it's possible I might have said at that gathering that an encouraging sign will be when a Democrat stands up and makes an issue of it. And I didn't know about this at the time.
Right.
But that's what actually did happen.
And Charles, tomorrow in Washington, D.C., there's going to be an important hearing. Larry Klayman spoke about this in our last interview. And of course, Larry is vying for a new role as special counsel to investigate Mueller. And I would love to see that happen. So just briefly, I want to remind people that they can sign Larry's petition at freedomwatchusa.org. And we really need someone with some legal gravitas to get in there and do something and hopefully put an end to all of this craziness.
Good. So, and here we have Frank Bruni is saying the same thing in the New York Times. And I met Frank Bruni a couple times. He is
Couple New York Times.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a conservative Republican or a Republican. And he reaches the conclusion that he's scared of Mueller because Mueller's mistakes are only going to embolden Trump in the end. But I mean, across the political spectrum, people across the political spectrum should be afraid of the precedents that are being set here.
It is hard to tell him from the Robert De Niro version of him that keeps appearing on Saturday Night Live. It looks very De Niro right there.
It does.
But it's a horrible precedent.
In his case, it's pronounced De Niro.
Right. But so, I mean, Bruni is writing for the New York Times, I presume. He's pretty
an opinion
left.
Columnist, yeah. He's a good writer. Yeah, so Trump is indeed gloating more and more. I think he should gloat. This morning he tweeted this out, look how things turned around in the criminal deep state. I mean, you're talking here about the President of the United States standing up to CIA, NSA, the 17 agencies, the FBI. I think this is refreshing, and I just hope he has excellent security.
Yeah, because we know exactly what happened the last time a president tried to stand up to the deep state, don't we?
Except I think that was then and this is now, and here we have, when something happens in this country, we know about it instantaneously.
Right.
And I think Donald Trump is pretty careful and wants to continue and serve out his term, maybe get reelected. I don't think he would have gone down this track without thinking through a lot of the issues very carefully.
Yeah.
And so let's continue to send positive energy his way. He's doing the right thing.
And certainly no convertible limos.
Yeah, no trips to Texas.
To Dallas, right, exactly.
Yeah. And this is interesting because this is a story about how in the last week on the generic congressional poll ballot, where the very beginning of I think 17 or maybe I think it was 17 or 18, the Democrats were ahead on a generic ballots. It's where would you pick a Democrat over any Republican? Democrats were up like 17 points.
Wow.
In the last week, it's gone from they were up 3, and now Republicans are up 6, something like that. A switch of 9 points in a week.
I think people are realizing you can only keep saying the same thing for a year and presenting no evidence before people start to wonder where are you getting this from?
It's like back in 2008, in April 2008, when I was working on the GE project, and there were all these arguments coming back from GE saying actually it's not as bad as you think. Actually, it was before March. It was before the Super Bowl in 2008, and there was a lot of negative chatter on GE, and then the word came back. Oh no, we have a new strategy. We're going to unveil it in the Super Bowl ad that we spent so much money for. It's our new strategy. And so I'm watching the Super Bowl, and there's the GE ad. And I see, I guess, which is the one, the Scarecrow who didn't have a brain or the Tin Man?
Yeah, the Scarecrow didn't have a brain. Tin Man wanted a heart.
Right, okay, so it's the Scarecrow, and there are all these electric lines, and it's a scarecrow trying to navigate these electric lines, and then the scarecrow starts singing, "If I only had a brain."
That's their new strategy.
That was their new strategy. I think that ad ran about once. And it was Echo Imagination. That we're gonna like GE's Echo Imagine. Let us be your brain.
What?
And I mean, I thought that these big companies had a rule against like doing drugs in the boardroom, but there's no way you could be sitting around the table as the CEO, senior people of General Electric, and say that was a smart move. And it wasn't a smart move. Similarly, what we're hearing now, and they actually were laughed out loud the other night when I was watching this. I want to say it was on Fox. It's probably logical that I'd be watching Fox, but it might have been last night or 2 nights ago that the new Democrat slogan that they're toying with now is to drain the swamp.
What?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're going to run. That Donald Trump is actually the swamp, and that in 2018, the Democrats are toying or test marketing the idea that their unifying banner is vote Democrat so you can drain the swamp.
Wow.
And I mean, they must have gotten the same team that did Echo Imagination. I mean,
yeah, maybe they should try that and kind of test that against build a wall or hashtag lock her up. I don't know.
Right,
Maybe
exactly.
some of these slogans might resonate with people.
That's called a foot fault in tennis.
It's right.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. But apparently the Obama administration was too slow to probe Russia meddling.
Yeah.
Were they?
Amazing. So if we go, we got to.
Those people don't look Russian, Charles.
They don't. They absolutely don't.
Except the guy in the red.
So actually, if we could just go to the slide itself first, the next page. Yeah, there's a series of, major league questions. And we've let's not pull up all these slides. Sure. I want to make sure we make your time deadline. We've talked about this a little. If the Russian meddling was so extensive, why didn't the Obama administration start talking about it way before the primaries even? And there was a moment of time when I don't think we have the clip, where Barack Obama was quoted as saying, when it appeared as if Hillary was going to win and that Trump might lose, Barack got up there and he gave some speech. It's preposterous to think that any foreign state actor could intervene in this election. That was like October time frame of 2016 from memory, because then it seemed like Hillary was going to win, and he didn't want to give the argument to Trump that there was collusion. And then, Trump won. Collusion, obviously, right? And it's quite a lengthy thing because he says, elections are basically administered on a state-by-state and local basis.
He said, what does that even mean, the concept the election is rigged? He's like, what does that even mean?
Ask Hillary.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, speaking of Hillary, isn't she getting a little dry?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you reminded me, Charles. I actually, specifically for, people may not realize that we always have Mrs. Clinton sitting right there. I know she prefers Chardonnay, but I have this lovely bottle of Pinot Grigio to wet her whistle.
Right. We'll put a little barrier between her and Donald to make it tougher anyway for Donald to.
That's right. So he can't stalk her or whatever she claims he was doing.
So Trump made this big comment in the morning, and then Comey comes back right away. Now, Comey must believe that he's immune, and maybe he did get some kind of a pardon. Our country is led by those who will lie about anything, says the liar.
That's crazy. And
look at this. I mean, we're beginning to understand how these shares work. How many shares does he have?
89.
All 89. This is a sign that, people are looking at this guy and saying, dude, you got to shut your damn pie hole. You're not helping anybody here. Right?
He's a wreck.
He is a wreck.
I forget where I was, if it was here or Los Angeles or New Zealand, where there's a pie restaurant called the Pie Hole.
Which would need, in his case, to be shut.
Yeah, exactly. Shut that restaurant. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems to me James Comey is, I think what it comes down to, Charles, is that these individuals who are so involved have become so desperate that they're just not going to give up, and the only thing that they can do is lie until the bitter end. I mean,
yeah,
it's
so if we
crazy.
move it along, you know, here we have this great article in the Federalist. And what I'm having a hard time understanding is, first of all, you look at this person and the way he talks, and you know, it's just, he exudes falseness.
Yeah.
You know, he has, as somebody once said about somebody sort of similar looking, he exudes all the serenity of a rat that has been doused in kerosene and is now being held over a fire. I mean, when he starts talking, when you put pressure on James Clapper, you know, to answer a question, he can't do it. And here he's trying to say he didn't lie in that Ron Wyden thing. He was answering a question about one topic, but thinking about another. That's not a lie. You're under oath, dude. I mean, you're in front of Congress. You're the head of the NSA, the most powerful operation, spying operation ever conceived of, and you can't tell the truth. I mean, you're disqualifying. Right. And now apparently this guy's got a book coming out as well. We've got another slide on that.
Yeah, that's crazy. He's got the book. Is that just the next one?
I think so. Yeah.
Let that
I mean, how
in.
could this guy, I gotta say, on a serious note, I don't think that CIA directors and people who are in charge of our nation's secrets, FBI, CIA, for that matter, the President of the United States, should not be allowed himself to write a book and monetize it and get, in the case of Bill Clinton, 15 million, the Obamas, whatever it is, 30,
65 million.
I mean, that's baloney. You should say, look, you're the President of the United States. I would argue that, frankly, this information came out recently that the median income for a wage earner is like $45,000. Give the President of the United States, be nice, give the President of the United States a $2 million a year pension for the rest of his life with the balance going to his wife. I mean, just some number like that. 50 times the median income, some enormous number, right? But they shouldn't be allowed to cash in on their public service to the tune of 65 million. And certainly this liar, and Dopey James Comey and the others, should not be getting multi-million-dollar advances, basically cashing in for an inside look on some of the secrets that they choose to reveal. It's not right.
Well, it also opens the door to a very similar thing to this GoFundMe deal. If people know that, hey, you play ball, when you leave this position, you're going to be able to write a book that we send you 30 million. I don't think $65 million will be earned by that Barack Obama book. I just think that's a way of sending money to Barack Obama.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, you know, platitude after platitude. I mean, all these presidential books are like that. So
make it a comic book.
This I want to spend a little time on. This if it's all right. This insider. This was a story, an interview yesterday that I was riveting. It's 4 minutes long. This fellow, John Kiriakou, was a CIA officer who served 30 months in prison for leaking information, okay? And, you know, Tucker did a great interview. I hope he has this Kiriakou guy back on. But here's 30 months in prison, and the approach that Mueller and Comey took, apparently, or Mueller anyway took, I don't know about Comey, was that it was Mueller and Brennan took, is that, you know, we're just going to ruin you. We're just going to ruin you. So eventually you cave because you got the resources of the federal government. Nobody's rich enough to take on the resources of the federal government.
Right.
And this guy's story needs to be told in full. He deserves a pardon, Mr. President. You're listening? Pardon this man, not Tucker, the other guy. And his full story needs to be told, and we need to say, like, for a leak, and in this case, it was the guy was leaking about torture.
Yeah.
He was saying that he disapproved of the torture tactics, which the left should lionize this guy. The Bush administration ultimately decided not to prosecute him, and then when Obama and Brennan got in, they said, no, let's make an example of this guy. And with Mueller, they destroyed him. They tried to they put him in prison for 30 months.
Wow.
That is, you know, baloney. You shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what happened to Scott Bennett, similar, not as extreme, but I mean, Robin Gritz was obviously targeted by these guys for not playing ball, so it definitely seems like you're either with them or you're in jail.
Yeah, and that's where I think this notion back in the day of having an FBI director serve for 10 years sounded good back then. I wonder if it shouldn't be more like 5. You know, not 10.
Well, why doesn't he just get reappointed every time there's a new president?
Yeah, it should straddle that because you want to have, there's a time, there are investigations,
I guess that's why they did 10.
But
so
10 is too long. I mean, I think, make it 5 or something, and make it subject to, this whole system of checks and balances, given the weapons that people have now, the new information technology weapons,
right.
It needs to be rethought through, I think. And anyway, this is a wonderful interview, and thank you, Tucker, for bringing the guy on. Hope you have him back on. So, Mark Stein, and there is only one Stein, and it is Mark, is just phenomenally gifted writer, journalist, whatever you want to say, showman, film critic even. I think he does that as well. But he's making the point that we really don't understand the whole story yet on how the deep state decided to let Hillary Clinton off the hook, because I think they had Hillary under their control. They have so much dirt, the deep state, on the Clintons. They probably figured, well, we can manage her. We can't manage Trump. Yeah. Because he's, as we see, he's not easily managed. This is a story that gets into that, starts to talk about the timeline. And I think the timeline here, people yet haven't interspersed the foundation timeline into this the way they need to, both the federal filings and the state filings. But when you do all that, what you see here is you see the deep state most likely understanding, Clapper and others, that Hillary and the Clintons were so dirty that they would be forced to play ball. They would be, the deep state could hold the marionette and pull the strings of the president. Right. And they really wanted Hillary in there for that reason.
They've been grooming her, arguably, right, for many decades, which is why these people get so upset when these sort of things happen, because it's plans they've, right, seeds they've laid long ago. I'm just looking at the fact that this operation against Trump, and Cheryl Atkinson brought this up as well, that was one of the hallmarks of a counterintelligence operation, was, sure, that it had a code name. This comes from the Rolling Stones song, Jumpin' Jack Flash. Quinn Michaels has been connecting the Rolling Stones to the Process Church and the 9-3 Society. We've heard about a secret society in the FBI and all of these weird influence operations. Just a connection, but an interesting one.
Yeah. So if we keep whipping along here, we don't have to pull this up, but the story that I wrote back in March 16th, 2015,
that's a classic. We should look at it.
But it is interesting in hindsight, when you do what I've been doing now for a while and you write a lot, you forget what you've written. Of course, as you get older, you forget everything. But and it's useful, though, to go back and look and see what you wrote. And this was written March 16th, 2015, 3 months before Trump announced.
Wow.
A month before Hillary announced. You look at 83,000 Facebook shares, it's 17,000 comments.
Whoa. Oh, that's comments. Where are the Facebook shares? Down the bottom?
At the top. It says here, Facebook, yes. 83,000.
Pretty good, Charles.
Yeah, well, it got a lot of them at the time. They seem to go in spurts. I don't know why that is, but anyway, the thrust of the story stands. Every objection that I raise in here has not been answered yet.
It's crazy.
And so what does it take to get the IRS to get up off its ass?
Well, what's up with the new guy? Is he in there?
He hasn't been appointed
What the hell is going on?
Well, I think the deep state and everybody are saying, we don't want that to happen, right? We can't let this person come. There's an acting IRS head. There's an acting person, last I checked, in charge of the tax-exempt operation. And I think Donald Trump should do, a temper tantrum, frankly. He should just say, listen, Mitch, you run the Senate. Okay, forget about your summer vacation. Just forget about it. Okay, confirm these people. We're not going for 2 years. Yeah. On this, we're just not doing it. We all understand the bad reasons why there wouldn't be a new IRS head, and not only the question is, as I've been saying for a while now, the question is not, why isn't the IRS doing this at this point? The question is, how many people have been involved inside the IRS obstructing a real investigation into the Clinton Foundation and all of its myriad entities? The IRS has records. You can see that from going online and seeing it's called some kind of manual, where they lay out exactly how you're supposed to conduct these investigations. There are records. There's not going to be a fire that destroys these records. They're not going to get bleach bit. There is a way of going back over the ground and saying, how many people are involved in obstructing this investigation? Let's find out what's really happened. Okay, and Corinne Brown's in prison 5 years for, relative to the Clintons, a minuscule offense, $800,000. Steve Stockman has not been sentenced, but he has been convicted for 18 felonies of about $1.2 million.
Oh.
So on this one, there needs to be some serious justice.
I think I've figured out why it's taking so long. Perhaps if they were just investigating who at the IRS is not involved, that might take a day.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I wrote this piece about in Life Set about this gala that's going to happen,
Right.
in theory, on Thursday, and we'll see if it happens.
Well, we haven't been able to find any information. This is really weird because, when I went to New Zealand, I remember someone who I was in contact with there, who remains unnamed, sent me this sort of special invitation to this VIP cocktail party that I hadn't heard about before. I knew that Hillary was going to be at the Spark Arena, but that's like a concert venue. This was a special thing, separate ticket, all that. I bought it. Went there. Everybody saw on the live stream. I was walking around. Several other obviously intelligent people expected Hillary was going to be there, and she wasn't. So now this thing, like you and I were looking at the website last night. How do you buy tickets? Where is it? How do you get in? It's so bizarre.
And it'd be one thing to say, this kind of stuff is normal, but under New York law, when you solicit in our state, and now we have an acting attorney general who is on notice that she is not going to be getting away with the status quo here. If you're going to solicit, and they are soliciting, there's one table. To be a patron, you've got to spend $100,000. So they're soliciting way more than $25,000 for special events. Their paperwork is not in order in this state. You can see it on the site. This article links into how to do all that. And so I don't understand why New York Democrats think it's a good idea to let these carpetbaggers from Arkansas come into the state, destroy the charity sector by creating this horrible example. And honestly, in New York State, there are a lot of charities. There are many big charities. The Carnegie Foundation is in New York State and many others. A lot of good work is done by the charity sector. Some of it's left-leaning, most of it's left-leaning. That doesn't matter. It's good work reaching out to help people. And here the Clintons are, lawyers both at one point, before they surrendered their law licenses, coming into our state and making a travesty of the charity laws. And people are just saying, oh, that's okay.
No, Chelsea's tweeting pro MS-13.
Is she really?
She just said that immigrants from Guatemala are building Donald Trump's buildings. It's not that everyone from Guatemala is from MS-13, but obviously gang violence and illegal immigrants that are involved in crime is something of concern. I mean, it's not something that can be summed up in a tweet. I just noticed that in there.
Right.
But yeah, the Clintons, I mean, this hopefully New York State becomes serious about charity fraud, because what you're saying is someone's soliciting more than $25,000 for a charitable organization that conducts an activity in New York, whether it be over the internet, television, whatever. If they receive any money at all from people in New York.
It does not receive. The test does not receive. It's just if you solicit. Right? You have to register in this state to solicit.
I wonder if Stephen Biss is listening to this broadcast right now.
I wonder. But the point is you have to do that, and I provide in this article the links to the laws.
Oh, that'll be good.
So, I mean, you can, their laws.
Forward this to Mr. Biss.
It's in the article. Just read the article.
That's great.
If you go down, it's, keep going down a little bit more. Operator law, let's see. I think it says, there you go. Laws and regulations are strict.
Well, they are strict, so we'll definitely make sure we read this carefully, because there are some people submitting confessions to federal court that don't seem to know this law. But let's carry on.
All right. So let's see. Yeah, this is a good one. This FBI vault.
Oh, yes, the vault.
Now I think you got the actual page.
Oh, right. Yes, yes, yes. So we've got that in
So
here.
this is, the bombshell, if we can make this a little bit smaller so we can see the date at the top. Yeah. On March 21st, 2001, this is in the third dump, and thank you, FBI Vault people. Thank you for putting this up recently. This is a bombshell here. This is page 138 of dump, you can see that over here, dump 3 in the William J. Clinton Foundation.
Part 3 of 3.
Yeah. Now we look here, and this is an internal summary, and it gives the name to the investigative services, to the special SC, whatever that is, John David Stenhouse, whoever that person is. It's from White Plains. It's approved by that special agent in charge, drafted by somebody.
Why do they not redact the special agent in charge, but the associate special?
I don't know. But look at this, 3 different case IDs as of March 21st open, 2001. And what is the title? I forget what unsub stands for.
Unknown subject.
Unknown subjects, right? And then William Jefferson Clinton, former President of the United States, and who next? Hillary Rodham Clinton, U.S. Senator, okay? There was an open investigation into Hillary Clinton while she was senator, just weeks into being a senator.
It's amazing. Charles,
For
how many
public
former
corruption.
presidents have been investigated by the FBI?
Probably all of them, no.
Really?
But I mean, this is mind-numbing. You say here, smartest woman in the world, automatically should be the first president of the United States. How does she get the job of being U.S. senator? It's kind of like the Kobe Bryant $2.5 million diamond, right? I mean,
I thought it was from killing JFK Jr.
No. In the case of Hillary.
Yeah.
Huh?
We'll talk about that in
that's another one.
episode.
Yeah. Okay. But no. She got to be U.S. senator in part out of guilt, right? Over Bill and Monica and all that kind of stuff, and there was a guilt trip and everything. But anyway, this is.
Oh, you mean people felt bad
Right.
for her?
Right.
Wow.
Right. In New York, especially where New Yorkers, particularly in Manhattan, are so enamored of the French way of life, and everybody has a mistress. And blah, blah, blah.
Is that right?
I don't know. But the point is, this is interesting because this dump 3 only came out recently. Dumps 1 and 2 were out all last year.
Yeah.
And in every single one, it covered up. You'll see in many of the others, it covered up these lines here. This is the first time we see on page 138. Now, maybe it was a slip up.
That this got released.
Yeah, that Hillary was a subject here. Of
And again,
3
this
criminal
is
investigations.
March
20
2001.
Right. Okay, so this is big stuff. And the people in the FBI, there's a rumor, we'll get to it in a bit, that the line FBI agents desperately want to go out and tell us what really happened. Forget this book. But this is an example of what has been hidden here, I think.
Now, this part 3 of 3, where does it tell us when this was released?
I don't know.
Okay. Interesting. Nonetheless,
So if we go back into it a little bit.
quite shocking. And also our friend DeRoy Murdoch is digging into that
Right.
FBI vault now.
He's a good man. Now, we don't need to pull this one up because I think the question's been answered. There was a story.
Has it?
Has
it been answered? I'm very curious about this.
Yeah, there's a rumor that, that's a great caricature of Theresa May. Wow. I shudder to think what they do of me. But the question is, we haven't heard much from Mohammed bin Salman in a while, so what's going on? There were rumors of, remember, machine gun fire in the palace a while back. Is he okay? I hope he is okay.
Well, this is the second gun attack at a royal palace in Saudi Arabia in less than a year. There was another one on October 6th or 7th, right after the Las Vegas shooting. And of course, there was speculation of, is there any Saudi involvement? Is there some sort of coup going on in Las Vegas? There was a security guard seen walking in a very bizarre video that the security guard looked so much like Mohammed bin Salman that there was some speculation that maybe he was a doppelganger going into position or something.
I don't know, but
controversial guy that a lot of people in Saudi Arabia seem to want dead.
I think he's, for what I can tell so far, a great guy. I wish he would spend, less money on yachts and Rembrandts and things like that, or Da Vinci's, and because that's not smart to say that we want to move forward as, away from the days of abusing the peasantry, and you're out there spending $500 million on a yacht. Probably not a smart move.
No, but
Yeah.
Rembrandts probably go up in value now.
Or Da Vinci's, yeah. So if we go to the next page, we're almost done. Donald Trump has demanded total transparency from Rosenstein.
Good
And
luck.
I'm thinking, we haven't played it, I don't think, the vignette of how if you wanted to get bin Laden, you'd send 2 guys from South Jersey out there to get him. Yeah, but
who does that?
it's a comic, it's like, yo, Vinny, get the bat. But as a guess, Trump is putting enormous pressure, and the powers that be are putting enormous pressure, as they should. And I'd heard rumors, I don't know if they're true or not, that Rosenstein has quite the temper now. He's feeling the pain. He's snapping at everybody, as he should.
Well, I mean, these guys are under tremendous pressure. They are going to go to jail, and I think that we're going to see them slipping up.
Well, jail is not a great place when you're the former head of the FBI or a U.S. attorney. It could be that there are a few people in that prison that you put away who probably aren't too happy about that.
Probably not. I wouldn't imagine it would go well for them at all. But even just falling from grace in their powers of their positions of power, where they can control all these things, would be a disaster for these guys.
So the Yahoo story: Republicans are now, amping up their demand for a special counsel, and in addition, they're going to get this information. And it's interesting that they made a decision tomorrow, I think it's the meeting, to get the information, not to have any Democrats at the meeting. And the Democrats are all up in arms. But if you think about it, why wouldn't you do it this way? The Democrats are the ones saying you're wasting time, there's nothing to this, they're leak central, Shifty Adam Schiff, cannot stand between it. He sees a microphone and he's got to get in front of it one way or another. But anyway, they're going to go and get this information tomorrow, and 18 Republican lawmakers want another special counsel to investigate the Department of the FBI. I think in addition to that approach, there need to be congressional hearings. And people will disagree with me because they're expert on Washington, D.C. Fine. I'm not an expert on Washington, D.C. I want to see hearings. They worked in Watergate. I want to see witness after witness. I want to see none of this 5 minutes per person questioning. I want, the Republicans to designate a questioner and the Democrats to designate a questioner, and I want them to follow all the way down a rabbit hole, each witness.
And it looks like President Trump was praising Tomi Lehrer for getting a drink thrown at her.
Water at her. Yeah.
That's really
I actually had nothing like that happen exactly to me, but the day after Trump won, I was on the phone talking about how great it was in a McDonald's, and this hobo came up, and he just dumped his breakfast tray on my table and then walked away. Like he thought he was like dropping the mic or whatever. He's dropping
the Egg McMuffin.
No, it was a whole big breakfast platter, the residue of hot cakes and syrup and all this shit. He thought I would have to clean it up.
Yikes. That doesn't sound so great.
Yeah. Anyway, so now Ron Johnson is demanding interviews, but because we're pressed for time here, we don't have to do that one. But we can if you want.
Well, whichever one.
Yeah, I'd go to the next one. This is an interesting one by Kerry Pickett. Look at this, 14,000 Facebook shares. It came out
today.
Yesterday at 10:08 p.m. But they want Congress, the FBI agents want Congress to issue subpoenas so that they can go forward and dish. And that's because, in part, when Congress does that, the legal fees of these agents are covered. And I think that's high time. And we've had enough of these top, I guess they call them 7th floor FBI, management types.
I thought 7th floor is the State Department.
And I think also, maybe it's not the 7th floor, but the top floor of the FBI, have been basically, I think, running this agency into the ground.
Yeah.
You have to say now, after many years, that the FBI is held in very low esteem.
Yeah.
And you can't blame that on the line agents. I mean, the criminals don't like the FBI, but...
The lion agent? Oh, the line agent.
Line, yeah.
We can blame it on the lying agents.
That's right.
Call me Ian McCabe.
And people who went to Yale Lie School, like Clintons. But that's good if we'll have
But
that.
I mean, if the people in the FBI are demanding that Congress subpoena people, I mean, that's sort of like them. They're literally standing up and clamoring for something to be done. It really
and it will happen.
shines a light on how they're being kind of minimized by the people in charge.
I think it'll happen. And on all that, I've been wondering, long wondering, all these reports coming out about how the different line agents had to sign non-disclosure agreements that were really binding and threatening people. Now, what's that all about? I think the American people have a right to know who was making these line agents, and at key moments of these various inquiries, sign these agreements. What were they holding over the line agents? Who was doing the holding over?
Well, we know what they're holding over. We see from Robin and we see from Michael Dick that and Michael McMahon that when you don't go along with what they want you to do, there are extensive resources at their disposal to destroy your life. Even just using the civil courts and intervening. I mean, all the things we see happening now, people digging out all kinds of things, writing letters to law enforcement. In the case of Michael Dick, they put his picture on Fox News saying that he was a violent, he was on the loose and armed and dangerous. And then 2 hours later it said, oh, that was a mistake, totally wrong. But then that news report was used in a family court matter that he was involved in that cost him custody of his daughter.
See, there has to be, the legislators who are listening to this we have to learn from this. And we have to put some more, just as it's wrong, it's obviously wrong to rape somebody or assault someone sexually, but it's also wrong to falsely accuse somebody of rape or sexual assault. And so,
or anything.
And so in this case, there needs to be some balance here, that you can't let these people run roughshod and get away with it. We need to find out actually what happened, not this book, actually what happened. And if it's not possible to prosecute people for what they did, we need to change the laws to put some better balance into all this so that this doesn't happen again.
Right.
So going forward, this Fox News story on Uma's laptop.
It's a nice photo of her.
Yeah, I think what probably happened, we're finding out now that they sat on the laptop when it was found sometime in September. And then when they reluctantly had to look through it, the magicians at the FBI somehow managed to conclude and sift through 650,000 messages and discover there was nothing wrong and exonerate Hillary or whatever for what may have been on this laptop. I think we have to go back in painstaking detail through what truly happened. We need to examine what were on these emails, how they came on this laptop, how these emails came to be on the laptop, what is the subject matter of each email, how much classified information was here, were these emails assembled on the laptop as an insurance policy to protect Uma and Weiner against the Clintons in the event Hillary lost. This is a subject that we need to go through, even if it's embarrassing, extremely embarrassing. We need to understand what happened here.
Yeah.
And going forward, government officials should only be allowed to use government laptops that are secure. They should only be allowed to use government emails, none of these aliases, none of these personal emails. If you're going to be a government employee, all your crap has to be secure, and all your emails have to be accessible, and none of these cute little ways of getting around it.
Yeah.
As evidently happened.
Burn bags. I mean, when you read some of the stories from Huma Abedin, she sounds a little bit more like Jesse from Breaking Bad than somebody who should be working for the State Department. Right. Walter White's right-hand man burning the evidence.
And I loved, actually, in one of these 21-part dumps of Hillary Clinton, it talks about how Hillary Clinton was wedded. I'm kind of like this as well, wedded to an old version of a phone, an old BlackBerry, and so you couldn't buy any of them from BlackBerry. So in this dump,
got them from eBay.
Yeah, they're buying used, BlackBerries to give the Secretary of State. What could go? Think there are any bugs planted in some of those?
Well, what I was going to say, Charles, is that there's obviously, we know that hackers rely on exploits and their weaknesses in any system that they can go into. And the only reason that I can think of for wanting to keep an older version of something is that the new version may eliminate a key exploit. Like, what is it about the old? I like the trackball better. It's like you said, she's the Secretary of State. A personal preference like that cannot supersede.
Right.
You know, there's a reason beyond just wanting to sell you another phone that these new versions come out. And certainly keeping the software up to date is the best hope, or the only hope, that someone has of staying ahead of these exploits, because as they're discovered, new software versions get issued that eliminate them. So that's potentially a very important aspect that needs to be looked at more. Why exactly did Hillary want to keep an old version to the extent that you would even go out and buy a used one? That's a very strong desire to have that old version.
So we'll move now into the domain of stuff that's not all as directly related to the Clinton Foundation and the fraud. But I found this amusing, that Donald Trump now calls her crooked, so that's what I'm going to call her from now on.
Save
crooked,
some time,
or
I guess.
C. Now here you look.
Oh, that's what the C stood for on her emails?
Crooked. But it only has 329 Facebook shares, but 4,000 comments. Look at this.
329 Atlantic Council shares.
Right.
Wow.
4,000. I wonder what some of those comments say.
That becomes, again, difficult to believe, because if 4,600 people are commenting, I would think...
You know, it's believable. When you share something because you think it's interesting, you comment on it because you hate it.
Yeah, think so?
Yeah. You say, hey, Jason, take a look at this, and so I send it to you. But I seldom comment, actually.
But you don't think that 10% of the people who were interested enough to comment, liking it or hating it?
No, this means that everybody hated it.
Right.
Which makes sense, right?
Look at that face.
Yeah. Well, but let's think about...
Are you sure that's not Boris Yeltsin?
In a wig?
Dug up and stuffed in a suit?
But here you got, Hillary Clinton, who's vanguard of women, right, endorsing Andrew Cuomo, who is, I would argue, the most ethically challenged Cuomo since his father.
Wow.
I mean, he was in charge of HUD, which was notoriously corrupt under Bill Clinton. The damage that he did and Clinton did at HUD ultimately caused the housing crisis. He then has, presided over a corrupt administration. He was the Attorney General after Spitzer from 2010 to 2014 or thereabouts.
Did he inherit the Rolodex, or that was it?
But my point is, I mean, he didn't discipline the Clinton Foundation fraud just when it was happening. Right. It was 2007 onwards. But and now Hillary, this famed feminist, is going to endorse Cuomo over Cynthia Nixon. I mean, frankly, Do you find Cynthia Nixon a compelling candidate? She was sort of the cranky one on Sex and the City. Yeah, like I spent a lot of time watching Sex and the City, but I actually, I don't like Andrew Cuomo. I mean, I can't wait for the analysis of what is that business program for New York, where he used to be on every channel, business, like New York Wants Yours. I forget the name of it, but it was a program to entice businesses to come into New York, and it was nonstop publicity, really, for Andrew Cuomo, because his name was always on it. And they've stopped running the commercials when New York spent $70 million on some facility for some company to entice it to New York. And after they did that, the company said, nah.
Wow.
Can you see the comments on this? I don't know.
Probably so. I'm just still fascinated by how many horrible photographs of Hillary Clinton they've accumulated.
Let's just see.
The comments, the 4,000. I don't know where they are.
Yeah,
Maybe
right
I have
here.
to log in or something.
No.
Oh, they're loading. There we go.
Let's see.
Please take the stairs. Stairs, please take Hillary.
I mean, one of the things, you can say what you want about Breitbart, and I wrote quite a few articles for Breitbart, or a few articles for Breitbart. The comments, the people who write comments are so clever.
Well, there's certainly going to be no love of Hillary on a Breitbart comment section.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So here's something that people outside the finance business may not understand as well as they need to. And I'll try, I could talk about this for a long time, and we don't have a lot of time.
Bonds.
But in the United States, we have, according to Obama, 57 states, but we actually only have 50 states.
Why does Obama think there's 57?
He was quoted several times. I've been to all 57 states.
Really?
Yeah, when he was running, yeah.
Oh my God.
But In America, if you set up a bank here, a big enough bank, you can get checking deposits, all over the place. It's pretty easy. It's a big country. A lot of people, the average person has a checking account. Average person has a balance that they don't use, and that's a source of investment capital for these big banks. If you have millions of customers, and each of the customers
fractional reserve banking.
Well, no, but if you have $500 in your account, on average, let's say a small amount that you're not using every month, 500 times, 10 million is a lot of free money. You're not paying interest. The bank isn't paying you interest, but the bank could take that money and invest it, with subject to constraints. In a place like Italy or Switzerland or Belgium, these countries, they have huge banks, but they don't have the internal populations to have that free reserves. So there aren't those deposits available inside these countries to finance these gigantic businesses. So what do they have to do? They have to get deposits, they're called broker deposits, across national boundaries, and they typically have to pay, back in the day they had to pay higher yields. Now, in some countries it's negative, but they nonetheless have the bother of trying to find capital across national boundaries. And even though there's an EU, there's a structural problem here, which makes these European banks very, very vulnerable now, particularly as the US, I think, does the right thing and raises interest rates here to try to stave off what we're seeing signs of inflation, price inflation. To stave that off, we have to raise interest rates. We do that, it makes these rickety European banks even more vulnerable. And what the Europeans haven't thought through here, but what Trump has in these negotiations over Iran and over all these different issues, we're in a far stronger economic position. Our military is much more experienced and stronger. And this European experiment is a fairy tale. It's not
EU.
The EU is a fairy tale. There's no unified taxing system. There's no unified military. There's no unified will. There's only 5 big countries. All the other ones are small.
Just kind of hanging on.
It's just it's not a serious concept, right? It's not. We tried this in the United States when we first got together under the Articles of Confederation before there was a Constitution, and it didn't work because you have to have, as a real country, you've got to have one treasury, one taxing system, one strong government, checks and balances, ideally a common purpose, and Europe doesn't have that. So this, though, is something to watch, and watch carefully. I didn't put up another one, which is Deutsche Bank is firing 10% of its American staff.
Wow.
Just announced that today. That's another, obviously, German bank in trouble. So I think for those watching carefully and thinking about markets, we care a lot about in this show about charity fraud and Clinton Foundation and politics, but there's going to be another story reemerging. It's been 10 years since the financial crisis. Last one really bit. I would argue there's been a lot of paper change, hope and change, but not real reform, meaningful reform of addressing the underlying problems in this country. And this is a canary in the coal mine here, this issue. So
So panic in the air about Italian bond carnage. Of course, Ted Malloch has a very low opinion of the EU.
Well, so do I.
Yes.
I mean, I called for Germany to leave the EU, which people thought I was crazy in
Wouldn't
2011.
that make it just collapse?
Yeah, that's why I called for it. So I also think it's sensible. So then we're going to close by whooping up on GE.
Oh yeah.
Which is something I like to do. And this is actually very scary.
Scary?
Yeah, because here you have this new guy replacing Immelt. He's had a bit of time now. There's a big investment fund that owns a fair amount of stock in the serious people. And the CEO is going to give his view of the future. And he gets up and he says, let's just say John Flannery, so it's a typo on their part.
Oh.
But he says expects the market for heavy-duty gas-powered turbines to remain weak through 2020. That's their biggest business. So the stock went down 7% today.
Was he sure that was what he wanted to say?
I mean, he probably is still using that if I only had a brain team. But if you look at the stock price here, that's not even, I don't think you could ski down a slope that steep. I think you'd fall off the mountain.
What time frame are we looking at there?
If you go to the top of the page, a little bit further up, it might show you. No, I guess not. if you click on it, it might, click on the graph, it might, at the bottom then? Yeah, very bottom.
It's so blurry. I can't
This
even
is,
see it.
I
Can't really see it.
I can't see it myself.
Well, it's going down. We
It's
can see
going,
that.
yeah.
That's the opposite of the direction you'd like to see that graph going, if that's your stock.
So to the people out there, thank you for staying with us through all these videos. If we go back to the slide, Jason, there has been a lot of progress. I am given to understand investigations that began in earnest last year as U.S. attorneys appointed by Trump and confirmed by the Senate began to get seated and look at the files inside this country. I believe there are U.S. attorney investigations. We know that there's an IRS investigation. If they decide that there's nothing to do here, we will know that the IRS is still very crooked. That will not be the end of the game. And there are other investigations in the U.S. at federal level and at state level, I believe. There are certainly international investigations, and this can only go on for so long. At some point here, it's going to have to crack. They're going to have to come forward and unseal indictments. They're going to have to win convictions. People are going to cave. A lot of people have been talking, is my understanding, for a long time here. You would not want to be the last insider to start talking at this stage. Particularly you rich people like the Saban family, like this fellow who's originally from Sudan who made the fortune in African wireless stuff, who's multi-billionaire and affiliated with the Clinton Foundation with exposure. You just don't want to be the last person to say, yeah, I'll trust the Clintons. You know, I won't get hurt here, because you're going to get hurt. And there is a chance for leniency, I think, for a modicum of leniency by cooperation. So I would encourage the people who have exposure, and you know who you are, you donors to this Clinton Foundation, you bet wrong. Don't double down and bet even more wrong. Come forward, cooperate, join the party, the correct party, learn from this experience. Charity land is going to be changed. The swamp is going to be drained. And you don't want to end up going down the drain yourself.
You know, while you're on the topic of draining the swamp, Charles, this article came in just as we were preparing the show. It's about, from the National Review, how the Clinton email investigation is intertwined with the Russia probe. And I mean, you know, this is just always the way. They really needed something to distract from the real crime, so they made up this nonsense about Russia.
This is interesting because midnight, May 4th, 2016, I believe that I issued a report 2 days after. I didn't know about this, obviously, but 2 days after this, shortly after this, I issued a report that got picked up for the first time in Zero Hedge, right after this. So they had a game plan. Once they knew that Trump would be the person, they had a game plan to take him down. And this mid-year exam, that was what the name was for the
investigation into the emails.
Right, and you know, think about if Donald Trump had operated, you know, had been Secretary of State and had operated the Secretary of State in, let's say, Trump Tower for 4 years, doing all of the business of the Secretary of State in Trump Tower.
Ordering taco bowls.
Ordering taco bowls or whatever. Do you think the FBI would have said, let's call this, you know, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, I gather is a senior guy, he demands, it provides a referral to the FBI saying you've got to open up a real investigation. Do you think Trump would have gotten the deference of, oh yeah, let's call it mid-year exam?
Well, are you sure that's not just the code name for it, so they can write about it?
No, we have the 21-part dump explains it. You know, explains it all. It's just this was a super secret, not secret, super important, high-level exam. We know the 698-page domestic operations guide explains how you have to treat these super important investigations involving politically sensitive people. I mean, this was from the get-go a decision to like tamp it down.
Yeah.
And what was happening on July 10th, 2015? McCabe's wife was still possibly going to be in the Virginia State Senate.
Right.
All right. And McCabe is out campaigning for his wife.
In violation of the Hatch
Right?
Act.
In violation of the Hatch Act. And so she doesn't win, and then the heat's coming up. And so what do? They say, oh, let's put McCabe in charge of this.
Well, I mean, you see how these sort of investigations operate. It's quite shocking. Of course, Andrew McCabe was busy using his FBI email and going out and campaigning for his wife, which Robin Gritz has told us many times, violation of the Hatch Act. It's no big deal. The FBI is supposed to be not politicized, and obviously this guy doesn't care about the rules at all. I think you're also probably not supposed to shtup the lawyer and spend all your time texting her when you're supposed to be investigating the Clintons.
Probably not.
Yeah, we'll have to check page 698 to see if that bit of advice is included in the manual. Do not have sex with the lawyer.
So
well, Charles, is there anything else for us to cover today?
Well, maybe we should go to the Conehead page or whatever.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can do that. No problem. The Conehead page can take us out. I do want to remind people, if they're watching us on vk.com, if they're watching us on periscope.tv/csTheTruth, if they're watching us on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, these are all the areas where they can see the show uninterrupted. We are still on YouTube, of course. People have been having difficulty finding us, Charles, because Crowdsource the Truth 2, which I had started after the initial channel, got some malicious strikes from anonymous people who were motivated by I don't know what. Crowdsource the Truth 2 also got a strike. So we've been temporarily live streaming on the 21st Century 3D channel. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense relative to Crowdsource the Truth, but that's my former production company, so that was an active channel. We've got about 2,000 people on there, so the shows are not getting, I mean, we typically, right now we have 177 viewing on YouTube. We were typically having well over 1,000. So there's been quite a dent, and if people watching right now will actively share this video, whether that's on Facebook or Twitter or just emailing, or if you know anyone who is a fan of Sunday with Charles or Charles Ortel Closing In or Crowdsource the Truth, they can share this. People can also support Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and becoming a monthly sponsor. We really do need that sponsorship. It does appear that we're going to be under constant, persistent, harassing legal assault, not for any merit of the claims of these legal suits, but simply to obstruct and to prevent me from being able to spend my time on working with important investigations like this one. We've been talking some more with Pepper Stanley about Peter Smith. It seems like elements of his investigation are coming back around now, and we're getting some more insight into, you know, as more of the players get revealed, exactly who may have been desperate to keep this information from coming to light. So we'll be back on Sunday with some more interesting information, and I'll be in Washington, D.C. tomorrow morning for a special hearing with Larry Klayman all about Robert Mueller. So perhaps Larry may be on his way to becoming the special counsel. I do want to remind people that they can go to freedomwatchusa.org if they'd like to see Larry Klayman become the new special counsel to investigate Robert Mueller and some of the criminal things Larry has been telling me that Mueller has engaged in as far as the impropriety of his investigation. They can go to freedomwatchusa.org. They can sign a petition there. They can support the good work that Freedom Watch USA is doing. And of course, Larry was the original founder of Judicial Watch as well. So he's done some incredible work to help protect the legal rights of Americans. Charles, thanks for joining me as you close in on some of these Coneheads. There's good faces I've got for each of them, looking
well done,
dopey as hell in that picture. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching.